This is Focus on Africa from BBC World News. I'm Sophie Ikenye. Our top stories. A nation grieves following Tuesday's deadly attack at a luxury hotel in Nairobi. 9 people have now been arrested.
My son, who was working at the hotel, he was killed by the gunmen. Some family members identified him yesterday, so they were waiting for me to come and identify him.
Police are investigating what led to the murder of an undercover journalist in Ghana. We have reaction from one of his colleagues. Freedom, peace, justice. Sudanese continue to demand change as riot police respond with force. Also in the program, the challenger speaks. With less than a month until the presidential election, Nigeria's main opposition candidate casts doubt on the credibility of the vote.
I have not seen any evidence that this government is actually willing to offer a free, fair and credible electoral process.
And in sports, Turkish giants Galatasaray are interested in a deal for Ivory Coast's Wilfried Bonyi. Thanks for joining us on Focus on Africa from BBC World News. We begin in Kenya, where officials say 9 people have been arrested following an attack on a luxury hotel compound in the capital, Nairobi. At least 21 people were killed in the attack by militants who stormed the hotel and business complex on Tuesday. All 5 militants were killed, and authorities say a major hunt is now underway to find those who helped organize it. A Somalia-based Islamist group, Al-Shabaab, says it was behind the attack. The BBC's Mercy Juma spent some time with families who were identifying bodies of their loved ones.
Many families have been forced to wait for quite a long time before they get the bodies of their loved ones. Some of them have been here for 2 days because the process of identifying the bodies, doing post-mortem and preparing them for burial has been quite long.
I'm here because of my son, who was working at the hotel. He was killed by the gunmen. Some family members identified him yesterday, so they were waiting for me to come and identify him.
He is dead.
Earlier today, the Kenya Red Cross released a statement saying all the persons that had been reported as missing have been accounted for, and they have now pitched tents just outside the mortuary, and volunteers are offering psychosocial support to all those people who have been affected by this attack. The Red Cross officials say so far they have offered counseling services to more than 500 people. Mercy Juma, BBC, Nairobi.
Joined by George Musamali, a security consultant who is in our Nairobi studio. Thanks for taking time to talk to us. Now, George, police sources are saying 2 of the attackers, as they say, at the complex were non-Somali Kenyans, and they say they were recently converted to Islam. I wonder what's taking authorities so long to give us the identity of the other attackers and really why?
It's difficult to identify the other attackers because you'll find that we having people in the country who are operating both from outside the borders of Kenya and inside the borders of Kenya. And there is a high possibility that some of the attackers even crossed the border from Somali and joined their counterparts inside Kenya. What is worrying us is that we have so many sleeper cells within the country that have not been identified. If you look at the arrests that have been made so far, we have 9 people have been arrested, and it's from different parts of the country. We have people who have been arrested in Nairobi. We have people who have been arrested in central Kenya, a place called Nyeri. And then we also have another group that was arrested in Isiolo. Clearly, it shows that we do not have a data for these people. We've not been putting them under surveillance. So it's difficult for us to establish exactly who is involved in this matter until investigations are complete.
Oh, then is it fair to say that these sleeper cells are re-emerging? Because in 2012, there was a huge crackdown on some of them.
It's not that they are emerging. Remember, we are calling them sleeper cells, meaning these are people who crossed the border, local Kenyans who crossed the border, joined the Al-Shabaab, they were trained there, they came back into Kenya, and they became sleeper cells, only waiting to be activated when it's necessary. And we are seeing it now coming up because from the information that I have, it's not only Nairobi that is affected, it's not only Nyeri. We have sleeper cells all over the country, as far away as Nyanza province, that is in Kisumu, Siaya. We have other sleeper cells also in Mumias that have been identified. But now what we don't have is a profiling of these suspected sleeper cells. And this is what now is bringing problems, because they will come out, carry out attacks, and after they have carried out the attack, this is when now we start identifying them as being homegrown terror suspects.
Now, people are talking about how effective the security operation was really, but there are also questions about how easy the whole bomb issue, the person who carried the bomb, how easy it was for them not to be detected.
I mean, the kind of tactic that was used in this current attack is old school, because remember, we've not, it's not the first time we've been attacked using a similar tactic. Westgate, we had active shooters, an active shooter situation. We went to Garissa University, an active shooter situation, and the Tuesday attack also used the same way. The fact that these people were able to assemble, do pre-operation surveillance, go to the planning stage, be able to get these weapons, transport them to the scene of incident, clearly shows that we have gaps in security that are supposed to be addressed urgently, because it's not easy for us to always being attacked using the same tactic. Somebody is sleeping on the job.
George Musamali, thank you very much indeed for your thoughts there in Nairobi. Thank you. Well, now, in Ghana, police are investigating the circumstances that led to the murder of a journalist, Ahmed Hussein Swale. The investigative journalist was shot dead in an apparent assassination near his home in Accra. He was a key member of Anas Arimeyo Anas Tiger Eye private investigations team. He played a role in the BBC Africa Eye's Malawi human harvest investigation and was instrumental in a wide-reaching expose into corruption in Ghana football, about which the BBC Africa Eye program made a documentary. Now, Thomas Nadi spoke with his colleague Anas earlier today.
I think that we should all be very careful. It's early yet. What is, however, clear is that there were threats, death threats, some made openly, some also made on tape against us, which we tendered to police during the number 12 football investigation. We have to be careful. Murder is about proving beyond reasonable doubt. So I guess these are the leads that the law enforcement agencies will look at, and if there is any merit in it, I think they will be the best to make a judgment.
So how often do you get threats?
I think it's a daily routine. I mean, once a big story breaks, it comes with its own issues. The judges will come with number 12 will come with this. It's normal, so it depends on what you are handling.
Will this particular incident affect your work as an investigative journalist?
Well, last night, it was a very low day last night. It was clear that team members were so unhappy, but interestingly, this morning, people are energized, they are back to their desk. See, those who come after our lives, the best thing to do to them is to tell them we are strong. And you see, this is not about the Tiger Eye person. The life of an investigative journalist has come to an end. It could happen to any other journalist in this country. And that's why I kept on saying that this whole fight is against journalism and not personalities or organizations.
What do you think this says about the media climate in Ghana at the moment?
I think that not just Ghana, everywhere. Sometimes when you have a right and you feel you have arrived and you don't do anything to protect that right, they take it back from you. And as journalists, we should keep pushing the frontiers of free press.
Undercover journalist there, Anas Arimeyo Anas. Let's now take a quick look at other stories making the headlines across Africa. Defense lawyers for Ivory Coast's ex-president Laurent Gbagbo are demanding his immediate release by the International Criminal Court after his acquittal on charges of crimes against humanity. The release of Mr. Gbagbo was ordered on Tuesday, but this has been challenged by prosecutors. He's the first former head of state to face trial at the ICC. Zimbabwe authorities have charged prominent pastor Evan Mawarire with subverting an elected government. He denies the charges, which carry a maximum of 20 years sentence. The pastor is just one of hundreds of people arrested following days of deadly protests over the fuel price increases. Leaders from Southern Africa and the Great Lakes region are meeting in Ethiopia's capital, Addis Ababa, to discuss the disputed presidential election in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Now, the meeting comes as the Constitutional Court continues hearing two petitions challenging the results of the December 30th election. Opposition candidate Felix Tshisekedi was declared winner. Now, the parliament in Burundi has voted to move the country's capital from Bujumbura back to the ancient capital Gitega in the second largest province. Now, the vote is yet to be formalized, but the country's Senate has announced the move will begin on the 1st of February. Now, there is less than a month to go until Nigeria's presidential election, but the main opposition candidate has told the BBC he doubts the credibility of the polls. 72-year-old Atiku Abubakar is widely considered to pose the biggest challenge to the sitting president, Muhammadu Buhari. Our correspondent, Mayeni Jones, began by asking whether he would accept the result if he lost.
I have not seen any evidence that this government is actually willing to offer a free, fair, and credible electoral process, because we have seen what they have done in their by-elections, where they have deployed, members of the security forces, sometimes to harass, voters, and sometimes to raid, voters that they believe, are from the opposition.
If you have concerns as to the fairness of the election, are you sure that you will concede when the time comes if you don't win the elections?
The problem is that we are working hard, and that's why I appeal to the international community also to work together with us to make sure that the elections are not only seen to be free, fair, and credible, but they actually are.
And if they're not, you'll still concede?
If they are not, we will of course consider what went wrong. And if we consider what went wrong is something that requires, rectification, by way of litigation or any other thing, we will go. But we will go it in a very peaceful way.
Why do you think that you should be president? A large proportion, over 60% of Nigeria's population is under the age of 30.
I have not stopped anybody wanting to be president, Jones.
Do you think that you should be clearing the way perhaps for a younger candidate to be running?
I have not stopped any young man from running, please, John.
But what are you doing to help?
Then there are so many of them running anyway. So why do you want to bring in discrimination here because of my age?
No.
If I feel that I have the strength, the health, the capacity to do it, why should it be an issue?
Some people might say it might be useful for you with your experience to perhaps help somebody younger come up.
It's up to them. It's up to them. If they like, they vote for me. If they like, they vote for a younger person. It's democracy.
But what are you doing to help younger candidates, younger people get access to this democratic process?
I have been interacting with younger people. When I had the opportunity to serve in government, I brought in more younger people. And today some of them are governors, some of them occupying very important political positions in the country.
Let's shift to security, which is another key issue in the upcoming elections. The insurgent group Boko Haram has been increasing its attacks on the military over the past year. Do you think the army is currently doing enough?
Yeah, I don't think the armed forces generally are doing enough. We have what I call a fatigue leadership. They have been there. And because they have been there for too long, there are no new ideas. So you see, you are deprived of, a younger generation of leadership that have, the necessary skill and training, that could be deployed, in the operations, of the armed forces. So that has to go.
This is Focus on Africa from BBC World News. Still to come, Mimi with all the sport as the NBA returns to London. We speak to some of their African stars. I'm Sophie Ikenye and you're watching Focus on Africa from BBC World News. The top stories on this program: 7 people have been arrested in connection with Tuesday's deadly attack at a luxury hotel in Nairobi, which killed 21 people. Ghana's president has condemned the murder of an undercover journalist who was involved in unmasking corruption in the country. Police have opened an investigation into the killing. Now, popular protests rumbling across Sudan are shaking the president's 30-year grip on power. Thousands gathered across the country for simultaneous demonstrations demanding Omar al-Bashir's resignation. In Khartoum, security forces fired live ammunition and tear gas to disperse the angry crowds. Well, let's bring in Ahmed Farid, who is a Sudanese political activist and member of the opposition group Sudan Change Now. Thanks for taking time to talk to us on the program. You have been in touch with the people on the ground. What have they been telling you about today's events?
Today, several tens of thousands have taken the different streets of Khartoum, the capital, on the three cities, Khartoum, Khartoum North, and Durman, and we're in a protest that is still ongoing. This protest was called for by the Sudanese professional associations since last week, and people have shown great deal of bravery and courage in taking the streets in the face of the military apparatus of the regime. The security forces have fired live ammunition and used tear gas and stormed into another hospital. They stormed Al Faisal Hospital and fired tear gas inside the emergency department of the hospital. They also stormed people's houses and arrested the youth from inside.
So
there are reports that yet to be confirmed about the death of two people by live ammunition.
Let me step in here, Amjad, because it appears that there was a lot that was happening today on the ground. But I wonder, given the fact that you say the demonstrators have been very brave in the face of the military operation, do you honestly think that President Omar al-Bashir will bow to pressure and resign?
The people are demanding their basic rights. People have accumulated this anger and this against President Bashir and his party NCB. So the demand is not only the resignation of Omar al-Bashir, but also the stepping down of the ruling party, the National Congress Party. People continue to demand very basic rights like social services, like public health sector and public education sectors, which are all lacking in Sudan. The minimum wage is less than $10, while the professional, the doctor's salaries and the lawyer's salaries is about $20 to $30. And the government is directing the majority of its fund to security and defense while allocating less than 5% to all these services collectively. There is a new reality in Sudan that Bashir cannot continue.
Mr. Farid, let me step in here again, and I'm just wondering how long people intend to go on with this, given the casualties we're seeing, as you mentioned, and the violence, so to speak. How long are they going to go on with this, briefly?
People have fed up, and now they are demanding this right, and I think people will take the streets until they hear their demands being answered. But however, there is a role of the international community that's looking at the crimes that happen in Sudan silently. Bashir is a president who came to power through a coup. He's not a legitimate president, and he's committing criminal offenses, killing of his own people, and the international community is still opening up.
All right, I'm afraid we have to leave it. I'm afraid we have to leave it there, Amjad Farid. But thank you very much indeed for taking time to talk to us on Focus on Africa on that very important issue. Thank you. You're watching BBC Focus on Africa. Let's find out what's happening in the world of sport. Mimi.
Thank you very much, Sophie. We start with football. The January transfer window is still open and Turkish giants Galatasaray are interested in a deal for Swansea striker Wilfried Bony. The Istanbul club are among a number of sides that have shown interest in the Ivory Coast international. Swansea are open to selling the 30-year-old who is thought to be the club's highest wage earner. Elsewhere, Mali's former Liverpool star Mohamed Momo Sissoko has returned to play in France at Ligue 2 Sochaux. His recent stints have been in Indonesia, Mexico and Hong Kong. Staying with the transfer action, Cardiff City interested in signing Everton and Senegal international Oumar Niasse. It's with an option to make the move permanent. The striker has only made 7 appearances this season. Elsewhere, Ghana international Samuel Nkum is back to football after almost a year out due to a FIFA-imposed ban. He's joined Bulgarian top-flight club Dunav Rus until the end of the season. The 29-year-old's ban was as a result of a dispute with his former agent, Curtis Weller, over a debt. Away from the transfers, Nigeria, the reigning women's African champions, were beaten 3-0 by China in a 4-nations tournament today. The home side opened the scoring in the 10th minute, adding 2 more goals in the second half. Super Falcons, as Nigeria are known, will now face Romania in the playoff for 3rd place on Sunday. To basketball, it's that time of the year again when the NBA comes to London for its 9th annual regular season game, which starts in a few hours. One African star to look out for is DR Congo's Emmanuel Mudiayi, who plays for the New York Knicks. Ian Mahinmi, a French basketball player whose father is from Benin, says that African players have come a long way, making it in the NBA.
It was a big hurdle where people didn't think that African players were good enough, to play. And I think that, I want to say, over the last few years, we showed that, not only we have big-time athletes, but we have really good players. And when you're talking about right now, this season, 2018-2019 season, and you're talking about an MVP race, you got to put Joel Embiid in that race. So that's how far we became, since, Hakeem won an MVP title. But now we are very much relevant, and I feel like any kid growing up in Africa feels like it's possible. Those guys did it, so why not?
We got a lot of, Africans starting to come in, and at the same time, they also have NBA Africa, they got a lot of stuff going on over there, so guys can develop, get the proper development at a young age. A lot of people didn't get a chance to get that while they was younger, so that's pretty good.
In tennis, more action from the Australian Open. There might no longer be African representatives in the singles, but Tunisia's Malik Jaziri and his partner Moldova's Radu Albat won in the first round of the men's doubles 6-2, 3-6, 7-6 over Japan's Ben McLachlan and Germany's Jan-Lennart Struff. And finally, to athletics, where the nominees for the Laureate Sports Awards are out. Kenyan World Marathon record holder Eliud Kipchoge is the only African to make the list. Kipchoge, who just won the Kenyan Sports Personality of the Year, is up for the Sportsman of the Year after his history-making run last year when he set a new record in his field. He'll have to beat off stiff competition from Novak Djokovic, Lewis Hamilton, LeBron James, Kylian Mbappe, and Luka Modric, who are also nominated. And that's all the sport. Back to you, Sophie.
Thank you, Mimi. Thank you for that. Now, let's leave you with this. Artican Beach in Lagos is where residents go to escape the stresses of the city. And one option for entertainment is a horse ride. Our producer, Grace Ekpu, captured the lives of the Lagos beach horsemen. Thank you for watching. See you next time.